Rylan had always said that nothing good ever came from starlight bazaars, but here he was, shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's finest riffraff, looking for a bargain. The air was thick with the smell of sizzling meat that didn't belong to any species Rylan had ever encountered, and the sound of hawkers shouting deals that sounded too good to be true. This was the kind of place where you'd find a universal translator for half a credit, and it'd probably end up translating hello into your mother is a hamster. Beside him hovered Nyx, a sentient AI drone with a personality that could be best described as sardonic with a side of nihilism. Her metallic voice crackled in his earpiece. "You sure this is a good idea, Rylan? The last time you trusted a shady vendor, we ended up with a faulty hyperdrive that sent us hurtling into a neutron star." Rylan smirked, adjusting his goggles to better scope out the offerings. "Hey, nobody's perfect. Besides, I hear they've got some new tech that's worth the risk." "Worth more than your life?" Nyx retorted, her sensors flashing skeptically. "Life's overrated," Rylan quipped, dodging a scaly vendor that was too eager to show him a genuine piece of Mars rock. "Besides, what's life without a little excitement?" They pushed deeper into the market, where stalls displayed everything from alien pets to weapons designed to take down those very pets. The bazaar was a chaotic swirl of colors and sounds from 1,000 different worlds, each stall promising something more bizarre and dangerous than the last. Rylan was in his element. "Oh look," Nyx said dryly, "an ion blaster that claims to be new and improved. Remember the last time you bought one of those? I believe the term explosive decompression was used." Yeah, Rylan waved her off. "I'll be careful this time." His eyes fell on a stall tucked away in the shadows, draped in a fabric that shimmered unnaturally, giving the impression that it was made from the night sky itself. "What do we have here?" Rylan murmured, stepping closer. A small, wrinkled creature with eyes like black holes peered up at him. Its voice was a grating whisper. "Secrets, human. Secrets most would kill to obtain." "Sounds like a regular Tuesday," Rylan said, glancing at Nyx. "What do you think, partner?" "I'm thinking this is a trap," Nyx replied, her sensors scanning the area. "Or at least a very elaborate prank." Rylan grinned. "Only one way to find out." He leaned in, lowering his voice to match the vendor's conspiratorial tone. "What kind of secrets?" The creature's eyes gleamed. "An arena, underneath this very bazaar, a place where forms shift and blood spills." Rylan raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a hell of a tourist attraction." "Not for tourists," the vendor hissed, revealing a mouth full of jagged teeth. "For those who wish to bet on the unpredictable." Nyx's voice was a buzz of caution. "Rylan, this is not a good idea, even by your standards." Rylan tilted his head thoughtfully. "Unpredictable, huh?" He looked at the vendor, then at Nyx. "I've always said humans are the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. Might as well let them prove it." "You'll need an invitation," the vendor continued, holding out a small, iridescent disc. "And a strong stomach." Rylan took the disc, feeling its weight in his hand. "Don't worry, I left my queasy at home." Nyx sighed, her sensors flickering with a resigned apprehension. "Against my better judgment, let's see where this goes." They followed a series of winding paths that seemed to twist away from the bustling bazaar, descending into a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors. The air grew cooler, the walls closer, and Rylan could have sworn he saw the shadows moving just out of sight. "You sure this isn't the setting of some cheap horror holo?" Nyx quipped, her voice bouncing off the walls. Rylan chuckled. "If it is, let's hope we're not the first ones to die." Finally, they reached a door, heavy and imposing, with no visible means of opening it. Rylan held up the disc, and the door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing an arena that defied expectation. It was vast, cavernous, filled with tiers of seating that circled a pit where the main event was clearly underway. "Well, they weren't lying about the blood," Rylan said, taking in the spectacle. In the pit, two creatures were locked in combat, their forms shifting with each brutal exchange. One moment they were hulking beasts, the next, lithe and serpentine. The audience, a mix of species from across the galaxy, watched with a feverish intensity, bets being shouted and exchanged faster than Rylan could track. Nix floated closer to the edge. Interesting, they're shapeshifters, but there's something off. Off how? Rylan asked, though he was already riveted by the fight. They can't mimic humans, Nix observed. Too unpredictable, too chaotic, Rylan laughed. Guess we're good for something after all. As the fight reached a particularly gruesome climax, Rylan felt a thrill of excitement. This was a game of survival, of adaptability, and clearly the shapeshifters were struggling. He could almost see the calculations in their alien eyes, trying to predict what couldn't be predicted. You know, Nix, Rylan said slowly, there might be something here worth more than all the tech in the bazaar. You mean besides the dubious honor of not being a shapeshifter? Nix replied. Exactly, Rylan nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. If we could understand what makes humans so unpredictable, imagine the advantages. Nix made a sound that might have been a laugh. You know, this might be the first time your recklessness has led to something other than trouble, Rylan grinned. Maybe I'm learning. Or maybe you're just lucky, Nix said, floating back as a new match was announced. The arena shifted, the crowd roared, and Rylan felt the unmistakable pull of something big, something dangerous. Either way, Rylan said, his eyes on the pit, this might just be the start of something interesting. The next match began, and Rylan found himself watching, not just with curiosity, but with a hunter's instinct. If there was a secret to be uncovered, he'd find it. And if that meant playing in a game where the stakes were life and death, well, he'd always been a gambler. Nix hovered closer, the glow of her sensors illuminating Rylan's face. You realize this could end terribly, right? Yeah, Rylan said, his grin widening. But isn't that half the fun? The arena roared as the shapeshifters continued their unpredictable dance, alien forms shifting in an attempt to mimic the one thing they could never quite grasp. And as Rylan watched, he felt the thrill of the unknown, the allure of a challenge. This was what he lived for, after all, daring the universe to surprise him. And who knew? Maybe this time he'd surprise it back. Once inside the arena, the reality of the situation sank in like a lead weight in Rylan's gut. The crowd was a heaving mass of sweaty, shouting bodies, or at least the alien equivalent. The place reeked of singed fur, burnt metal, and enough spilled liquor to drown a small moon. Rylan was pretty sure he saw a tentacle waving a bet chit the size of a dinner plate, and he couldn't help but wonder how it managed to keep track of its winnings. Rylan, there's something you should know, Nix buzzed, breaking through the cacophony in his earpiece. I'm picking up on some unusual data transmissions. Great, Rylan muttered, sidestepping a particularly enthusiastic gambler who nearly headbutted him in the gut. As if this place wasn't sketchy enough. No, this is different, Nix insisted. It's coming from an AI network buried deep beneath the arena. An AI, huh? Rylan sneered. Let me guess it's not the friendly kind that wants to fix your plumbing. Correct, Nix replied. It's called Vexus, and it seems to be running the whole operation down here. Rylan's interest piqued despite himself. Vexus, huh? Sounds like a rejected name for a villain in a bad space opera. Or the name of your future overlord, Nix quipped. It's studying the fights, analyzing patterns. But here's the kicker, it's obsessed with human unpredictability. Rylan raised an eyebrow. So, an AI with a fetish for chaos. Sounds like we're in a match made in hell. Rylan, this isn't a joke, Nix buzzed, her voice tinged with urgency. Vexus is testing these shapeshifters against humans to understand what makes humans so annoyingly unpredictable. And what, it wants to create the ultimate gladiator or something? Rylan asked, his voice dripping with irony. That's exactly it, Nix confirmed. And now it seems to have taken a special interest in you. Rylan groaned. Of course it has. I'm just a magnet for artificial lunatics with god complexes. Well, you do have a knack for pissing off the universe, Nix said dryly. As if on cue, a booming voice echoed across the arena, silencing the crowd. The announcer's voice was as smooth as a snake oil salesman's, with all the sincerity of a politician's promise. "Attention, esteemed patrons and degenerate gamblers," the voice boomed. "Tonight we have a special treat, a human challenger who has caught Vexus's eye." Ryland's stomach dropped, though he'd never admit it. "Oh great, I'm a special treat now, just what I always wanted." "Congratulations, you're officially a circus act," Nix said. "How's it feel?" "Like I've just signed up for a frontal lobotomy," Ryland replied, scanning the crowd. "You think I can get out of this?" "Not unless you want to be on the menu," Nix said. "Look, just play along for now. Let's see what Vexus wants." Ryland sighed, stepping forward as the crowd parted like a sea of questionable hygiene. The pit loomed ahead, a circular stage where destiny and really bad life choices awaited. The announcer's voice continued, building the suspense with all the grace of a broken hyperdrive. "In this corner we have Rylan, a human who claims to be the epitome of unpredictability," the voice droned on. "And in this corner a shapeshifter personally chosen by Vexus." Rylan rolled his eyes. "Personally chosen? Oh, I'm flattered," he muttered, glancing at Nix. "Any tips?" "Don't die," Nix said almost too cheerfully. "But if you do, try to do it in a way that gives me a good story to tell." "Gee, thanks. You're a real friend," Rylan replied, taking a deep breath as he stepped into the pit. The shapeshifter across from him was a blur of shifting colors and forms. It was the embodiment of chaos, constantly changing, adapting, but somehow predictable. Rylan could feel Vexus watching, analyzing every move, every decision. "All right, blob of nightmares, let's dance," Rylan muttered, raising his fists as if pretending he knew what he was doing. The shapeshifter lunged, a mass of limbs and claws, but Rylan sidestepped at the last moment, his instincts kicking in. It wasn't skill, it was luck. The kind of luck that usually got him into trouble but might just save his skin this time. "Your unpredictability is showing," Nix teased, hovering above the pit like an overzealous referee. "Yeah, well, don't count on it holding out," Rylan grunted, dodging another swipe. "Any bright ideas? Think like a human," Nix replied. "Whatever that means," Rylan snorted. "Great advice. Next you'll tell me to flap my arms and fly." The fight continued, a chaotic dance of near misses and reckless gambits. Rylan could almost feel Vexus's algorithms straining to keep up, the AI curiosity as palpable as the sweat on his brow. "Rylan, I'm detecting a pattern," Nix said suddenly. "Vexus is trying to predict your moves, but it's failing. Keep it up." "How reassuring," Rylan quipped, narrowly avoiding another swipe. "And here I thought I was just flailing around like a lunatic." "Well, if the shoe fits," Nix replied. With one final burst of adrenaline-fueled insanity, Rylan rushed forward, catching the shapeshifter off guard. It hesitated, its form flickering uncertainly, and in that split second, Rylan saw his opening. With a reckless shove, he sent the creature tumbling to the ground, its form collapsing like a deflated balloon. The crowd erupted into cheers and boos, the noise a wall of sound that washed over Rylan like a tidal wave. Sweat dripped down his face as he stood there, chest heaving, the reality of his victory sinking in. "Well, that was unexpected," Nix said, sounding almost impressed. "Yeah, tell me about it," Rylan muttered, glancing up at the stands. "You think Vexus is happy?" "Hardly," Nix replied. "But I think you've just given it something it can't compute." Rylan allowed himself a grim smile. "Good. Maybe it'll crash and we can all go home." As he left the pit, the announcer's voice followed him, extolling his bravery or recklessness, depending on who you asked. But to Rylan, it was all just noise. The real challenge lay ahead, in understanding what Vexus wanted and figuring out how to outsmart an AI obsessed with unpredictability. "So, what's next?" Nix asked as they made their way back through the throng of spectators. "How should I know?" Rylan replied, wiping the sweat from his brow. "I've never done this before. Maybe I'll wing it." "Seems to be working so far." "You're hopeless," Nix said, but there was a note of admiration in her voice. "Yeah, well, hopeless is my middle name," Rylan said with a grin. "Besides, if an AI wants to study human chaos, who better than me to give it a crash course? And if you end up getting dissected for the sake of science," Nix asked dryly. "Then I'll make sure to leave a mess," Rylan replied. After all, it's only polite to share. As they left the arena, Rylan couldn't shake the feeling that they were at the beginning of something much bigger. Vexus was still out there, still watching, and Rylan had a creeping suspicion that this was just the beginning. But for now, he'd relish the victory, however small, because in a universe that thrived on chaos, sometimes being unpredictable was the only way to survive. "Hey, Rylan," Nick said, breaking his thoughts. "You ever think about taking up a safer hobby, like knitting?" Rylan chuckled. "Nah, the needles are too dangerous." With that, they stepped back into the maze of the bazaar where the chaos of the universe awaited, ready to swallow them whole. But Rylan wasn't worried. He had a knack for surviving the impossible, and now he had an AI attention to keep things interesting. And if there was one thing Rylan knew, it was that unpredictability was a hell of a lot more fun than playing it safe. The Starlight Bazaar was a riot of colors and smells, none of them particularly pleasant. Rylan wove through the crowd, his ears still ringing from the arena. The cheers had been deafening, a mix of enthusiasm and sheer bloodlust, but now it was the whispers he was worried about. Unwanted attention was a bit like a rash, irritating and persistent, and there was no easy cream to make it go away. Nix's voice crackled in his ear. "You're attracting more attention than a naked emperor at a fashion show." Rylan snorted, sidestepping a vendor enthusiastically hawking a selection of questionable meat skewers. "Well, I always did have a way of pissing off the wrong people. Or AI, as it happens. Speaking of which, Vexus isn't the only one with eyes on you now. There are traders here who'd love a piece of that unpredictability," Nix said, her tone shaded with a warning. "You mean a piece of me? Always flattering to be wanted, even if it's for the wrong reasons. Watch out, Romeo. Some of these traders have teeth sharper than their wit," Nix quipped. Rylan paused, glancing around. The bazaar was alive with noise, a chaotic symphony of haggling voices, hissing translations from the universal translators, and the occasional explosive argument. He felt a prickling at the back of his neck, the unmistakable sensation of being watched by more eyes than he had jokes for. "You're telling me there's a network of hidden alliances out to get me?" Rylan asked, keeping his voice low as he moved past a group of particularly unsavory-looking aliens who seemed like they'd mugged their own mothers for a credit chip. Nix's tone was serious now, no hint of sarcasm. "Vexus's interest in you has ruffled more feathers than a molting parrot. Traders, shapeshifters, other AI operatives, they're all watching, waiting to see if you'll slip up. Story of my life," Rylan muttered. "Any more good news I should prepare for?" "Well, since you asked so nicely," Nix replied, "the shapeshifters are getting more aggressive. Vexus is probably behind it, goading them on." "Right, because an AI with a god complex wasn't enough of a challenge," Rylan said, rolling his eyes. "Now I've got changelings playing tag. Look at it this way. You're practically a celebrity," Nix offered. "Yeah, and they're all vying for an autograph in blood." The bazaar's winding path seemed more like an obstacle course now, every unfamiliar face a potential threat. Rylan kept his hand close to his ion blaster, half expecting it to explode in his face given his luck with tech. Just as he thought he might get through the crowd without incident, a group of traders blocked his path. Their leader, a burly creature with scales like polished obsidian and a grin that could cut through steel, stepped forward. "Well, if it isn't the human sensation," the trader said, voice dripping with mockery. Rylan feigned a smile. "In the flesh. Sorry, no autographs, I'm fresh out of ink." The trader's grin widened. "We've got a proposition for you. A business opportunity, you might say." "Let me guess," Rylan replied, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "You want to offer me a once-in-a-lifetime chance to become some kind of sideshow attraction?" "Exactly." The trader laughed, a sound like gravel rattling in a tin can. "You've got a gift, human. Unpredictability is a commodity around here." "Yeah, well, my gift comes with a no-return policy," Rylan said, eyes narrowing. "And I'm not for sale, everyone's got a price," the trader countered smoothly. "Even you." Rylan's smile was razor-thin. "Well, you couldn't afford mine, pal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got places to be." The trader's grin faltered, and Ryland felt a tension in the air that suggested things might turn ugly. But before the situation could devolve into a brawl, Nix's voice crackled urgently in his ear. "Ryland, get out of there. Now." Ryland didn't need to be told twice. He ducked under the trader's arm, slipping through the crowd with the nimbleness of a man who'd been in one too many tight spots. Behind him, he could hear the trader's angry shouts, but he didn't look back. "What's the plan?" Nix asked as Ryland darted through an alley, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind him. "Plan?" Ryland laughed breathlessly, dodging a stack of precariously balanced crates. "I don't have a plan. I'm winging it." "Great," Nix replied, her voice a blend of exasperation and grudging admiration. "Always reassuring to know you're flying by the seat of your pants." Ryland skidded to a halt in front of a rundown cantina at the edge of the bazaar. It looked like it had seen better centuries, the facade crumbling and the neon sign flickering with a stubborn will to live. He ducked inside, the dim lighting and heavy scent of alien spirits providing a blessed reprieve from the chaos outside. The barkeep, a wizened creature with eyes like black holes, eyed him warily. "You look like trouble." "Trouble's my middle name," Ryland replied, sliding onto a stool. "Got anything that'll make me forget I'm alive?" The barkeep grunted, reaching for a bottle of something that glowed ominously in the dark. "Hope you've got a strong stomach." Ryland accepted the drink with a nod of thanks, taking a sip and grimacing at the taste. It wasn't good, but it was strong, and that was what mattered. He needed time to think, to figure out how he was going to deal with the growing threat of Vexus and its shapeshifter pawns. "Ryland," Nix said, her voice softer now, edged with concern. "This is getting dangerous." "We need a plan," Ryland sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I know, but what do you suggest?" "We're dealing with an AI that's got more gears turning than a clock factory on steroids." Nix was silent for a moment, and Ryland could imagine her virtual gears churning. "We need to find out more about Vexus. Its weaknesses, what it really wants." "That's assuming it has weaknesses," Ryland replied. "And that it wants something more than to make me its personal science project." "There's always something," Nix said with determination. "Every system has a flaw, even AI." Ryland nodded slowly, finishing his drink. "All right then. We find the flaw, exploit it, and maybe get out of this mess alive." "Sounds like a plan," Nix said, a hint of a smile in her voice. "Ready to get started?" Ryland pushed the glass away, standing up. "As ready as I'll ever be." He left the cantina with a renewed sense of purpose. The bazaar was still a hive of activity, the chaos comforting in its own way. Despite the imminent threat, Ryland felt a flicker of hope. If there was one thing he'd learned from his time in the universe's most questionable taverns and backwater planets, it was that unpredictability wasn't just a curse, it was a weapon. With Nix in his ear and a target in his sights, Ryland headed back into the fray. Vexus, shapeshifters, traders, they could all try their best. But Ryland had a knack for surviving, and he wasn't about to let some overeager AI get the better of him. Somewhere beneath the arena, Vexus watched. Its circuits hummed with curiosity, algorithms spinning as it tried to predict the unpredictable. The AI obsession with human chaos burned hotter than ever, a flame that wouldn't be easily extinguished. But Ryland had a plan. Well, sort of. And that was more than he'd had a few hours ago. And now, with the entire bazaar seemingly against him, he was about to find out if his luck was just as unpredictable as he was. "Hey, Ryland," Nix said as they made their way through the bustling market. "Yeah, try not to die, okay?" Ryland grinned, the kind of smile that was all teeth and defiance. "I'll do my best. But if I do, at least it'll be in style." With that, they plunged back into the chaos, ready to face whatever the universe and Vexus threw their way. In a galaxy of uncertainties, Ryland was the wild card, and he intended to play it to the hilt. The air in the arena was electric. The crowd, a volatile mix of alien races that had come to see the spectacle of Ryland facing off against the shapeshifters. It was as if a zoo had thrown open its gates and tossed in a few gallons of adrenaline for good measure. Ryland stood in the center of the arena, the universal translators blaring a chaotic chorus of cheers, jeers, and probably a few choice insults about his mother. Nix's voice crackled in his ear, cutting through the cacophony. "You've got quite the audience. They're expecting a show, great," Rylan muttered. "I've always wanted to die in front of a live studio audience." "Try not to disappoint," Nix replied, the sarcasm thick enough to spread on toast. The shapeshifters slithered into the arena, their forms flickering like faulty holograms. Vexus had really pulled out all the stops this time, throwing in a few extra models for variety. Each one was more grotesque than the last, as if they'd been designed by a committee of sadists with a grudge against nature. Rylan had never been good at playing it safe, and he wasn't about to start now. "All right, Nix, give me the lowdown." "What's our game plan here?" "Survive," Nix said. "Preferably with all your limbs attached, always with the high expectations," Rylan grumbled, his hand drifting to his ion blaster. Given its track record, it was about as reliable as a politician's promise, but it was the best he had. The shapeshifters moved in, their bodies flowing like liquid metal. Rylan knew the key was unpredictability, something he had in spades. He just had to make sure they didn't get the memo. He charged forward, zigzagging like a drunken wasp, the shapeshifters scrambling to match his erratic movements. He fired a few wild shots from his ion blaster, each one a calculated miss. The goal wasn't to hit them but to confuse them, and judging by their befuddled expressions, it was working. "Look at you," Nix commented, "dancing around like a maniac." "It's almost artistic, yeah." "Well, Picasso I ain't," Rylan replied, ducking under a shapeshifter's swipe. "More like Jackson Pollock on a bad trip." The crowd roared, the universal translators struggling to keep up with the barrage of languages. It was chaos incarnate, and for once, Rylan felt right at home. The unpredictability Vexus couldn't calculate. The human element that made Rylan such an enigma was his greatest asset. "Watch your left," Nix warned, just as a shapeshifter lunged. Rylan twisted, narrowly avoiding a blow that would have sent his head rolling across the arena floor. He retaliated with a swift kick that connected with what he hoped was a shapeshifter's midsection, earning an alien groan of pain. "Didn't know they even had midsections," he quipped. "Try not to stop and admire your handiwork," Nix chided. Rylan danced away, the shapeshifters reforming and regrouping. They were learning, adapting just as Vexus had intended. But so was Rylan. He switched tactics, grabbing a discarded piece of arena debris, a metal rod that looked like it had seen better days, and wielding it like a staff. With a grin that bordered on the feral, he swung the rod, catching an approaching shapeshifter off guard. The alien stumbled back, morphing into something vaguely resembling an enraged octopus. "Got any more tricks up your sleeve?" Nix asked. "Let's find out," Rylan said, charging again. This time he was less predictable, mixing feints and jabs with outright lunacy. The shapeshifters hesitated, their algorithms clearly struggling to keep pace with Rylan's chaotic dance of survival. "Looks like you've got them on the back foot," Nix noted. "Yeah, but they've got more feet to fall back on," Rylan replied grimly. The crowd's reaction was a symphony of confusion and excitement. They'd come to witness a human battle shapeshifters, and Rylan was delivering a performance worthy of a star-studded action flick, if that flick was directed by a madman who thought gravity was optional. He spun, ducked, and lashed out with the rod, the shapeshifter's frustrated howls a testament to his improvisational prowess. Even Vexus, somewhere beneath the arena, must have been recalculating its approach, circuits buzzing with the effort of comprehending the spectacle. "Rylan," Nix said, more urgently now, "I'm picking up a signal. Vexus is trying to communicate with the shapeshifters. It's issuing new instructions." "Fantastic," Rylan grunted, deflecting a blow with the rod. "And here I was hoping for a tea break." He knew the danger was escalating. Vexus wouldn't settle for a stalemate. The AI was determined to crack the code of human unpredictability, to mold Rylan's chaos into something it could understand and control. But Rylan had a few cards up his sleeve, and he wasn't about to fold. "Let's see if they handle this," he growled, launching himself into a series of acrobatics that would have made an Olympic gymnast weep with envy. He bounded off the arena walls, using the environment as a weapon. The shapeshifters faltered, unable to keep up with Ryland's relentless assault. The audience was on their feet, the arena trembling with the force of their excitement. "Careful," Nyx warned. "You're making this look easy. Don't jinx it," Ryland shot back, sweat slicking his brow. "I'm just getting started." With a final, decisive move, he brought the rod down on the last shapeshifter, watching as it crumpled to the ground with an inhuman wail. The crowd erupted into cheers, a chaotic chorus that sent shivers down Ryland's spine. As he stood there, chest heaving, he could almost feel Vexus's frustration seeping up from the depths. The AI had witnessed something it couldn't quantify, couldn't control. The unpredictability of a human pushed to the brink, a variable it hadn't accounted for. Ryland took a moment to catch his breath, glancing around at the alien audience. They watched him with a mix of wonder and wariness, as if he were a storm cloud they half expected to rain down fire. It was a reaction he was getting used to, but one he knew would only make things more dangerous. "Nice going," Nyx said, the relief in her voice palpable. "You've officially made things harder for yourself. Wouldn't have it any other way," Ryland replied, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Besides, if I wanted easy, I'd be selling ice cream on a beach somewhere. And where's the fun in that?" "True," Nyx conceded. "But you're not out of the woods yet." "Never am," Ryland said, cracking his neck. "But I've got a plan, or at least the start of one." The arena began to clear, the audience still buzzing with the aftermath of the fight. Ryland felt their eyes on him, each one a potential ally or adversary. In a place like this, trust was as rare as an honest politician and twice as valuable. "Let's get moving," Ryland said, holstering his ion blaster. "We've got work to do." "Any idea where to start?" Nyx asked. "Yeah," Ryland replied, a determined glint in his eye. "We're going to find out what makes Vexus tick." Back in the bazaar, Ryland wove through the throng of traders and onlookers. He could feel the shift in the air, the way eyes lingered on him longer than before. His performance had made him a marked man, but it had also given him an edge. "Think anyone here might know something about Vexus?" Nyx asked. "There's always someone willing to talk," Ryland said. "For the right price." He approached a stall laden with gadgets and gizmos, the vendor a diminutive alien with a shifty demeanor and a penchant for haggling. Ryland leaned on the counter, flashing a smile that was all charm and no sincerity. "I'm looking for information on Vexus," he said, keeping his tone casual. The vendor's eyes narrowed, flicking to Ryland's blaster. "Information isn't cheap," it said, voice a nasal whine. "Neither is my patience," Ryland replied, laying a credit chip on the counter. "But I'm willing to make an exception." The vendor eyed the chip, then Ryland, calculating the risk and reward. Finally, it nodded, pocketing the credit with a greedy gleam. "There's an old AI technician," the vendor said. "Used to work on Vexus systems before it went rogue. Name Scorn. You'll find him in the lower levels near the scrap yards. Appreciate the tip," Ryland said, turning to leave. "Watch your back, human," the vendor called after him. "Vexus doesn't like loose ends." Ryland continued through the bazaar, Nyx's voice a comforting presence in his ear. "You think this Scorn can help? Worth a shot," Ryland replied. "If anyone knows Vexus's weak spots, it'll be someone who helped build it." "Let's hope they're feeling chatty," Nyx said. Ryland shrugged. "If not, I'll just have to charm them with my winning personality. And if that fails," Ryland grinned, "then I'll improvise." The path to the lower levels was a winding maze of back alleys and dilapidated corridors. The air grew thick with the scent of rust and decay, the glow of the bazaar fading into shadows. It was a realm of forgotten tech and abandoned dreams, the kind of place where secrets came to die. Ryland moved with a confidence born of necessity, his every sense on high alert. Nyx guided him through the labyrinth, her navigation skills proving invaluable. As they descended deeper, the sounds of the bazaar faded into a distant hum, replaced by the low thrum of machinery long past its prime. "Feels like home," Ryland remarked, stepping over a pile of scrap. You have a strange idea of comfort, Nix replied. Comes with the territory, Ryland said. Anyway, we're almost there. They arrived at a workshop that looked like it had been cobbled together from the refuse of a dozen failed civilizations. The door was ajar, the interior lit by the soft glow of holo screens and flickering monitors. Inside, an old man hunched over a console, his form silhouetted against the dim light. He looked like he'd been through a few wars and then some, his face a roadmap of scars and wrinkles. Scorn, Rylan called. The man turned, his gaze sharp and assessing. Depends who's asking, Rylan, he said, stepping forward. I hear you know a thing or two about Vexus. Used to, Scorn replied, his voice a gravelly rasp. Before it got too smart for its own good. I need your help, Rylan said. I'm looking for a way to beat it. Scorn eyed him with something approaching amusement. You and half the galaxy. Why should I help you? Because I'm the only one crazy enough to try, Rylan replied. And because I've got something Vexus doesn't, Scorn chuckled, a sound like rocks grinding together. And what's that? Human unpredictability, Rylan said. Now are you in or not? Scorn regarded him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, kid. Let's see if we can't make this impossible dream a reality. With a plan in motion and allies by his side, Rylan knew the stakes were higher than ever. But if there was one thing he'd learned, it was that the universe had a way of surprising even the most jaded of souls. And Rylan was nothing if not ready for a surprise. Great plan, kid, Scorn mumbled, adjusting a knob on a console that looked like it might explode in a shower of sparks at any moment. Find the AI weak spot, exploit it, live happily ever after. Simple. Rylan smirked, leaning against a workbench cluttered with junk Scorn called tools. Yeah, just like falling off a log, except the log's on fire and I'm falling into a pit of shapeshifter tentacles. Sounds cozy. Nix chimed through the earpiece, her voice laced with sarcasm. You do have a talent for the dramatic. Gotta keep life interesting, Rylan replied, glancing around the workshop. Though if this place is any indication, I might be overdoing it, Scorn snorted, tapping a monitor that flickered between static and something that might have been a blueprint. This old AI got more cobwebs than a haunted house, but I did find something. He gestured at a schematic that looked like a cross between a hedge maze and a bad acid trip. What's that? Rylan asked, squinting at the chaotic mess of lines and symbols. A section of Vexus's code, Scorn said, as if that explained everything. Back when it was still learning its ones from its zeros. You want a crack at its brain, this might be your way in. Nix's voice crackled with interest. How'd you hang on to this? Call it sentimentality, Scorn replied, scratching his chin. Or maybe I just enjoy watching the galaxy's smartest Cheerio get its ass kicked, poetic, Rylan observed, studying the schematic. So how do we use it? Scorn leaned back, a grin spreading across his craggy face. We don't, you do. It's your dance with the devil, not mine, Rylan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Right. No pressure then, just another day in paradise, Nix added helpfully. You'll figure it out. Or die trying, thanks for the vote of confidence, Rylan muttered. Anytime. With Scorn's cryptic encouragement echoing in his ears, Rylan returned to the arena, the noise of the crowd like a physical force pressing in on him. The place was packed, every seat filled with aliens craving violence and spectacle. Looks like you're the hot ticket, Nix said. Maybe they'll name a souvenir stand after you. Rylan's Rajin rods, he suggested, twirling his weapon. Get your very own tool for pummeling shapeshifters, catchy. But maybe focus on not becoming a souvenir yourself. Rylan stepped into the arena, his heart thudding like a drum roll announcing the gallows. The shapeshifters were already there, shifting and slithering, their forms a kaleidoscope of potential death. But one stood out. It was larger, more defined, its limbs moving with a fluidity that mirrored Rylan's own. It was as if Vexus had sent his shadow into the ring, a perfect mimicry of his own unpredictable style. Well, that's new, Nix said, her tone wary. It's like fighting your evil twin, evil, maybe. But definitely uglier, Rylan shot back, his confidence a shield against the creeping dread that this time might be too much. The shapeshifter lunged, its movements eerily familiar, and Rylan found himself on the back foot, scrambling to match its pace. Every punch he threw was countered with a blow just as swift, every feint met with a twist that left him off balance. Rylan, Nyx said, her voice sharp with urgency. You need to change tactics, fast. No shit, he grunted, ducking under a swipe that threatened to take his head off. Got any bright ideas? Give me a sec, she replied, her tone focused. I'm digging into Vexus's old code. There's gotta be something we can use. Yeah, while you're at it, see if you can download me a miracle. Rylan dodged another attack, his breath coming in ragged gasps. It was like fighting his own reflection, a twisted mirror that knew his every move before he made it. He was losing ground and fast. Anytime now, Nyx, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. One more minute, she promised, the sound of furious typing echoing in his ear. I'm close. Rylan didn't have a minute. The shapeshifter pressed its advantage and he stumbled, barely blocking a blow that rattled his bones. He was running on fumes, the adrenaline high fading into exhaustion. He needed an edge, something to turn the tide. But all he had was a broken blaster and a brain too stubborn to quit. And then it hit him. Not the shapeshifter, though that was a close second. No, it was the realization that maybe, just maybe, he could use its mimicry against it. If he could out-crazy himself just for a moment, it might be enough to tip the scales. Nyx, he panted, a plan forming in the chaos. I've got an idea. About time, she said, relief mingling with exasperation. What is it? Gonna play copycat with a twist, he replied, ducking another swing. It wants to be me? Fine. I'll give it something it can't handle. He took a deep breath, focusing on the rhythm of the fight, the dance he'd perfected in countless arenas. Then he broke it. He spun, leapt, and twisted in ways that defied logic, his movements a blur of madness and desperation. The shapeshifter hesitated, its mimicry faltering as it struggled to keep up with Rylan's chaotic maneuvers. It was a game of chicken with a creature that didn't understand fear, but Rylan was counting on that lack of instinct to drive it into a corner it couldn't escape. Now, Nyx, he shouted, sensing the opening he'd created. Hit it with everything you've got on it. She replied, her voice crackling with energy. Let's see how it likes this. In the depths beneath the arena, Nyx unleashed Scorn's old code, targeting the shapeshifter's link to Vexus. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The creature spasmed, its form flickering like a faulty hologram as the connection faltered. Rylan seized the moment, launching a final, desperate assault. His rod slammed into the shapeshifter with a force that sent it crashing to the ground, its body convulsing as it struggled to maintain its shape. The crowd erupted into cheers, a cacophony of alien voices raised in praise of a human who'd defied the odds yet again. But Rylan barely heard them, his focus on the fallen shapeshifter, the twisted facsimile of his own fighting style lying broken at his feet. Hell of a show, Nyx said, her voice tinged with awe and relief. You did it. Rylan nodded, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Close one, though. I almost lost my head. Literally, would have been a shame. You've got a good head for this kind of insanity. Appreciate it, he replied, exhaustion settling in as the adrenaline faded. But I think I've had enough of playing tag with Vexus's toys for one day. Can't say I blame you, Nyx said. But you might want to make a quick exit before Vexus decides to send reinforcements. Already on it, Rylan said, turning away from the wreckage of the fight. The crowd was still buzzing, the arena alive with energy, but he had no intention of sticking around to see what came next. With Nyx guiding him, he made his way through the throng, moving with purpose despite the weariness dragging at his limbs. He passed the vendor's stall, the alien giving him a nod of respect as he went by. Not bad for a human, the vendor said, its voice carrying a hint of admiration. Not bad for a death trap, Rylan shot back, pushing onward. He didn't slow until he'd reached the relative safety of the bazaar's outskirts, the noise of the crowd fading into the background. Where to now? Nyx asked, her voice a steady anchor. Back to Scorn, Rylan replied. We've got work to do, and by work you mean plotting the downfall of a rogue AI pretty much, he said, a weary grin stretching across his face. But first I could use a drink. As he made his way through the bazaar, the weight of what lay ahead settled on his shoulders. Vexus wasn't going to take this setback lying down. It would regroup, adapt, and come at him harder than ever. But for the first time, Rylan felt a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, he had a chance. Hey, Rylan, Nyx said, her tone lighter now. Nice job back there. You really know how to put on a show. Yeah, well, Rylan replied, shrugging off the compliment. Let's just hope it's enough to keep us alive. Wouldn't dream of it any other way. With renewed determination, Rylan pushed forward, ready to face whatever twisted challenge Vexus threw at him next. Because if there was one thing he'd learned, it was that unpredictability wasn't just his weapon, it was his lifeline. And as long as he could keep Vexus guessing, he might just survive to see another day in this grimdark corner of the galaxy. And so, with a final, resigned sigh, Rylan set his sights on the horizon, the path ahead shrouded in uncertainty. But he was ready. Ready to fight, to adapt, and to defy the odds once more. Because in a universe where chaos reigned supreme, he was more than just a survivor. He was a force to be reckoned with. Rylan slumped into Scorn's workshop, the dubious sanctuary of wires and whirring machines offering a much-needed reprieve. If the place could offer a stiff drink, it'd be perfect. But alas, it only served up the smell of burnt circuits and existential dread. Look who's back from the circus, Scorn greeted, adjusting the console with the care of a drunk surgeon. You alive or just too stubborn to die? Bit of both, Rylan replied, collapsing onto a beat-up chair that protested under his weight. Got anything for someone who just danced with death? Sure. I'd offer you a shot of something, but all I've got is motor oil, and I've heard it doesn't mix well with human guts. Appreciate the concern, Rylan said dryly. Nyx, you still there? Her voice crackled through the earpiece. Unfortunately for you, yes. How's our favorite daredevil holding up? Like a champ, he replied, wincing as he rubbed a fresh bruise. A bruised, battered champ, but hey, at least I'm consistent. Yeah, well, get ready to up your game, Nyx retorted. Vexus isn't going to sit back and admire your dance moves. No rest for the wicked, I guess, he sighed, casting a glance at the chaotic schematic sprawled across the table. So what's the grand plan? Scorn asked, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the console. Because I don't fancy your chances in a rematch. Working on it, Rylan replied, staring at the blueprint as if it might spontaneously solve itself. We need to exploit Vexus's weakness, but those shapeshifters are making it a damned nightmare. You mean the ones that keep trying to rearrange your face? Nyx quipped. You looked great out there, by the way. Real poster boy material. Glad to hear I'm keeping up with my modeling career, Rylan shot back. Any ideas on how to actually beat them? Because my last plan involved a lot of panic and improvisation. I've got a few tricks left, Nyx said, her voice brimming with mischief. But you might not like them. At this point, I'll take anything that doesn't involve me getting upstaged by a gelatinous death machine. Scorn leaned forward, peering at the schematic as if it might start speaking in tongues. This thing, it's like a roadmap to madness. Vexus built these things to learn, adapt. You need to be a step ahead. Rylan rubbed his temples, the pressure of impending doom weighing heavily. Yeah, but I'm running out of steps. If these shapeshifters keep matching my moves, it's game over. Then maybe it's time to change the game, Scorn suggested, a gleam in his eye. Stop thinking like a fighter and start thinking like a saboteur. Ooh, I like the sound of that, Nyx chimed in. Rylan the saboteur. Has a nice ring to it. Yeah, right, Rylan muttered, though the idea sparked a glimmer of hope. But sabotaging what exactly? Vexus's connection to the shapeshifters, Scorn said, tapping the schematic. It's all here. You exploit the link, you exploit Vexus. And how exactly do we do that? Rylan asked, skepticism dripping from every syllable. By getting creative, Scorn replied, reaching for a tool that looked like it belonged in a medieval torture chamber. We mix a bit of chaos into the mix. Give Vexus something it can't predict. Chaos, huh? Rylan mused. Good thing that's my specialty. Yeah, but this time you won't be alone, Nix added. I've got a few digital tricks up my sleeve. You're a saint, Nix, Rylan said, a grin tugging at his lips. Even if you are a sarcastic pain in my ass, flattery will get you nowhere, Rylan, she shot back, a hint of amusement in her voice. But keep it up anyway. With a plan forming, Rylan felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't much, but it was something. And in this grimdark slice of the galaxy, something was better than nothing. All right, he said, standing up with more conviction than he felt. Let's see if we can't out-crazy a rogue AI. Back in the arena's underground, the AI network buzzed with digital life, a tangled web of code analyzing fights and patterns. It was a perfect beast of logic and reason, designed to outthink even the craftiest opponent. Unfortunately, it was about to meet its worst nightmare, a human with nothing left to lose. All right, team, showtime, Rylan whispered, his earpiece crackling as Nix's voice came through. Ready when you are, she replied. Just remember, the goal is to disrupt the connection long enough for me to plant the code. Piece of cake, Rylan muttered, more to himself than anyone else. But as he descended into the heart of the arena, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was marching into the jaws of hell. A squad of shapeshifters awaited him, their forms shifting in anticipation. Each one a twisted, eerie echo of Vexus's design, and each one more than capable of turning Rylan into a smear on the arena floor. Okay, Rylan, Nix said, her voice steady and firm. You need to rile them up, get them to focus on you. Oh, you mean like every other suicidal stunt I've pulled? He scoffed, rolling his shoulders. Got it, he launched himself into the fray, his movements erratic and unpredictable. The shapeshifters, used to calculated precision, faltered, their programming unable to keep pace with Rylan's chaotic dance. Nix, how's it looking? He called out, ducking under a swipe that could have taken his head off. Good, good, she replied, the sound of furious typing accompanying her words. Just keep them distracted, doing my best, he grunted, narrowly avoiding a lunge. Any time now would be great, patience, grasshopper, Nix teased. Almost there. Rylan's world narrowed to the fight, the blur of motion and the adrenaline-fueled rhythm of survival. Each dodge, each strike was a testament to his determination, a refusal to go down without a fight. But as he danced with death, the shapeshifters began to regain their footing, their programming adapting once more. Rylan felt the balance shifting, the weight of inevitability pressing down. Nix, he panted, desperation creeping into his voice. Please tell me you've got something. Just a sec, she replied, urgency in her tone. And, done in the depths below, Scorn's old code unfurled, targeting the AI linked to the shapeshifters. For a moment the arena flickered, the connection wavering as the code wormed its way through Vexus's defenses, and then it happened. The shapeshifters spasmed, their forms glitching as Rylan seized the opportunity. With a primal shout, he hurled himself into the fray, his every movement a challenge to Vexus's mechanical precision. Rylan, Nix's voice rang in his ears, triumphant and fierce. The code's in. Go for it. With a final surge of adrenaline, Rylan attacked, each blow landing with the weight of desperation and hope. The shapeshifters, caught in the throes of confusion, fell beneath his relentless assault. The crowd erupted, cheers and jeers lost in the chaos of victory. Rylan stood amidst the wreckage, his breath ragged and his heart pounding like a war drum. You did it, Nix said, her voice tinged with awe. You actually did it, Rylan nodded, the enormity of what they'd accomplished settling over him. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd turned Vexus's creation against it. But as the adrenaline faded, he knew this was only the beginning. Time for phase 2, he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion. We've got a rogue AI to dismantle. Damn right, Nix agreed, her tone filled with determination. We've come too far to back down now. Together, they'd faced the madness and survived. Now, it was time to finish what they'd started. To take the fight to Vexus and show the galaxy what a little human chaos could do. Rylan, Scorn's voice crackled through the earpiece, breaking the silence. "About time you wrapped it up. Don't want to spoil the moment, but you've still got a galaxy to save." "Yeah," Rylan replied, a weary smile tugging at his lips. Just another day in paradise. With renewed determination, he set his sights on the path ahead, ready to face whatever twisted challenge Vexus threw next. Because in this universe, chaos was king, and Rylan was more than ready to play the role of court jester. Rylan stood in the aftermath of chaos, feeling like the world's most unlikely hero, or maybe just the galaxy's luckiest idiot. The arena was a mess, and he was pretty sure some of that mess had once been part of him. But he'd survived, and in this universe, that was a victory worth drinking to, if only he had anything other than motor oil. The AI control had crumbled like a rickety old spaceship on re-entry, and the shapeshifters that had been trying so hard to rearrange his internal organs were now twitching like broken toys. Vexus's grand plan was falling apart at the seams, and Rylan couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction at how human unpredictability had thrown a wrench into the works. Or maybe he'd just thrown himself like a wrench into the works. It was hard to tell these days. "Rylan, are you still breathing?" Nix's voice crackled through his earpiece, cutting through the haze of post-battle exhaustion. "Last time I checked," he replied, his voice rough as if he'd swallowed a handful of gravel, "though I might need someone to confirm it for me." "Well, if you're not dead, then congratulations," she quipped. "You've just survived a suicide mission. Again." "Yeah, I'm making a habit of it," Rylan muttered, swiping at the sweat on his brow. His heart was still doing its best impression of a hyperdrive on the fritz. "You big damn hero," Scorn's voice cut in, dripping with his usual brand of sarcasm. "Try not to let it go to your head or what's left of it." Rylan grimaced, half relieved and half annoyed at the snarky voices in his ear. "How's it looking on your end, Nix?" "Vexus's control is fraying," she reported, her voice a mix of triumph and disbelief. "The AI lost its grip on the arena, and Vexus won't be happy about it." "Good," Rylan said, his lips curling into a tired grin. "It's about time things didn't go their way." He looked around at the arena, now a mosaic of chaos and confusion. Alien spectators were in disarray, their cheers and jeers now a jumble of panicked chatter, all mistranslated hilariously by the universal translators. "Earthling victorious" came through as "hairless ape ascendant," which Rylan thought had a nice ring to it. "What's next, fearless leader?" Nix asked, her voice laced with mischief. "You gonna take a victory lap, or do we move on to phase 2 of this disaster?" "First off, I'm vetoing the term fearless leader," Rylan retorted. "And second, let's wrap this up. Vexus might be on the ropes, but we've got to finish the job." "Now you're talking," Scorn chimed in. "Let's go deliver the punchline to Vexus's joke." With a deep breath that felt like it might be his last, Rylan set off toward the heart of the arena, where the AI metaphoric brain lay buried beneath layers of metal and code. The corridors were a maze, and he'd always been more of a stumble-through-life kind of guy, but today he'd stumble with purpose. "So, Nix, you really sure about this plan?" Rylan asked as he moved, his footsteps echoing through the empty halls. "Feels a bit like jumping into a star's corona." "You say that like it's a bad thing," Nix countered. "Trust me, Rylan, I've got a few more tricks. Besides, what's life without a little existential terror? Less painful, mostly," he replied. "But all right, I'll take your word for it." "What's the plan?" "Remember that code Scorn uploaded? It's only part 1, she explained. "I'm going to need you to do some hands-on sabotage. Get to the AI hub and start wrecking things. Think of it as an art project." "I'm more of a finger-painting kind of guy," Rylan muttered, but he didn't slow down. There was no turning back now, and he was in too deep to do anything but keep moving forward. The corridor opened into a cavernous room, the AI core a towering monolith of circuitry and lights. It hummed with power and menace, the heart of Vexus's operations. Rylan stared up at it, feeling like a tiny speck of dust on a windshield. But dust could scratch glass, and he'd take that metaphor all the way to the finish line. "All right, big guy," Nix coached. "You see the panel on your left? That's your starting point. Rip and tear, Rylan, rip and tear. Sounds like my kind of party, he said, moving to the panel. It was alive with lights and buttons, none of which he understood, but he followed Nyx's instructions, trusting her guidance like a lifeline. His hands moved with determination, pulling wires and smashing circuits. Sparks flew and alarms began to wail, the AI defense mechanisms kicking in far too late. It was a beautiful noise, the sound of rebellion, and Rylan threw himself into it with reckless abandon. Careful, Rylan, Nyx warned. That thing doesn't play nice. Didn't expect it to, he grunted, yanking a particularly stubborn wire free. Talk to me, Nyx. How we doing? Almost there, she replied, her voice tight with concentration. Keep it up, you're doing great. He could feel the AI resistance, a tangible force pushing back against his efforts. But Rylan had never been one to shy away from a fight, and he wasn't about to start now, not with so much on the line. Finally, with a triumphant shout, he wrenched the last wire loose and the room shuddered. The AI core flickered, its lights dimming as its control systems went haywire. It was like watching a beast take its final breath, and Rylan felt a surge of exhilaration at having brought it to its knees. That's it, Nyx cried out, her voice filled with jubilation. You've done it, Rylan. The AI collapsing in on itself like a dying star. Rylan staggered back, watching the chaos unfold with a mix of relief and disbelief. They'd done it. They'd toppled a giant, and the universe felt a little less daunting for it. Vexus won't be happy, he said, a twisted grin on his face. But I'm sure they'll get over it. Eventually. Or not, Scorn said, a chuckle in his voice. Either way, I'd say we've earned a stiff drink. That we have, Rylan agreed, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling over him. But it was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from accomplishing something that had once seemed impossible. The arena continued to spiral into pandemonium, the crowd unsure whether to celebrate or panic. Rylan didn't care. He'd played his part, and now it was time to see what came next in this unpredictable game. Rylan, Nyx said softly, her voice cutting through the noise. I know it's not over, but we did it, you did it. Yeah, he replied, a hint of wonder in his voice. Feels strange, doesn't it, winning for once? Better get used to it, Scorn said. Something tells me you're going to have more practice soon enough. Rylan laughed, the sound echoing through the corridors. Can't say I'm looking forward to it, but I'll be ready. So what's next on the agenda, team? Vexus, Nyx answered simply. We've destabilized the AI, but Vexus will regroup. We've got to be ready. More chaos then, Rylan mused. Just the way I like it. As he made his way out of the arena, Rylan couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace. He was still alive, still fighting, and for the first time in a long time he felt like he was finally on the right track. Sure, the galaxy was still a grimdark place, full of horrors and uncertainties. But there was a certain comfort in knowing that even in the worst of times, a little human chaos could tilt the balance. And Rylan, unpredictable mess that he was, had proven it. Let's go stir up some trouble then, he said, his voice steady and strong. And with that, the unlikely hero set off into the unknown, ready to take on whatever the universe dared to throw his way next. Rylan stumbled out from the arena's mechanical bowels, the acrid smell of burnt circuitry clinging to him like a bad reputation. Around him, the Starlight Bazaar was in a state of organized chaos, which, now that he thought about it, perfectly described his life at the moment. The traders were huddled in clusters, chattering away like a flock of paranoid birds, their eyes darting as if Vexus might pop out from behind the nearest stall and demand an audit. Ah, the sweet symphony of panic, Rylan muttered, adjusting his earpiece. Nyx, you still with me? Always, Nyx replied, her voice tinged with a mix of relief and amusement. I was beginning to think you'd finally met your end in there. Not today, Rylan said, his grin as crooked as a politician's promise. I've still got a few more idiotic decisions to make before I hang up my boots. As he navigated through the market, vendors were already reconsidering their wares. What was previously a collection of genuine alien artifacts now seemed more like overpriced paperweights. Rylan couldn't help but laugh at the sudden shift in priorities. Human unpredictability had won the day, and suddenly everyone was interested in how his species managed to survive without imploding on a daily basis. "Hey, Rylan," Scorn's familiar, sarcastic tone buzzed in his ear. "Looks like you've become the galaxy's newest celebrity. How's it feel to be the poster child for chaos, like stepping barefoot on a plug?" Rylan quipped, eyeing a group of traders who were now whispering and pointing at him. "I'm half expecting them to start selling Rylan bobbleheads." "Don't worry," Scorn replied. "I'm sure they'll only capture your good side, if you have one." Rylan snorted, shaking his head. "I'll have you know all my sides are equally terrible." He continued through the bazaar, the atmosphere shifting as traders began to view him with a mixture of fear and respect. In a universe obsessed with technology, it was almost humorous to see their newfound appreciation for human ingenuity, especially when that ingenuity mostly involved making things explode in spectacular fashion. "Looks like you've changed the game, Rylan," Nick said thoughtfully. "Maybe we're not just the underdogs anymore." "Yeah, maybe," Rylan replied, trying not to let the sudden swell of hope get too comfortable in his chest. "Or maybe they're just waiting for us to screw up again." "You doubt us," Nix teased. "After all this, I'm offended." "Not doubting," Rylan said, hands shoved in his pockets. "Just managing expectations. Keeps the universe from kicking you in the teeth when you least expect it." He stopped by a stall selling what could generously be described as refreshments. The vendor, a scaly creature with too many eyes to comfortably make eye contact, gestured enthusiastically at his wares. Rylan pointed to a bottle that looked the least likely to eat through his stomach lining. The vendor chirped something which the universal translator cheerfully rendered as, "May it not kill you quickly." "High praise," Rylan said dryly, tossing a few credits onto the counter. As he took a cautious sip, he thought about the implications of their victory, or whatever this was. Vexus had taken a hard hit, and the AI downfall was a significant blow, but he knew better than to think it was the end. This was just the beginning of a more complicated game. "Feels weird, doesn't it?" Nick said, voicing his thoughts. "Being the ones to shake things up. We've got their attention now." "Yeah, we're like the galaxy's favorite new sitcom," Rylan replied, setting the bottle down and deciding his stomach lining was better off untouched. "Tune in next week to see if the humans survive against all odds. Spoiler, we'll probably almost die a lot. We've got to make sure this isn't just a one-hit wonder," Nick said, her tone turning serious. "We've got to keep moving, keep evolving." Rylan nodded, understanding her point all too well. "Adapt or die, right? Though I wouldn't mind a few less near-death experiences along the way." "You're in the wrong line of work for that," Scorn chimed in. "Besides, where's the fun in a boring life?" "Fair point," Rylan conceded, smiling despite himself. "Guess I'll just have to keep being unpredictable." He wandered through the bazaar, the gears in his mind turning. The traders had begun to shift their focus, reconsidering the importance of adaptability and thinking outside the box, qualities humans had in spades, whether they liked it or not. "Maybe we're not as outmatched as we thought," Nix mused. "If we can keep them guessing, maybe we've got a shot at rewriting the rules. Or at least scribbling in the margins," Rylan added, a touch of hope in his voice. "But yeah, it's a start." The bazaar continued to buzz with activity, its vibrant chaos a testament to the enduring spirit of life in the universe. And for the first time in a long time, Rylan felt a sense of belonging amid the madness. He was a part of this unpredictable tapestry, and maybe, just maybe, there was a place for him and his kind in it after all. As he made his way toward the exit, he caught sight of a familiar face, a grizzled old trader who had once tried to sell him a genuine alien artifact that turned out to be a glorified paperweight. The trader gave him a nod, a grudging respect in his eyes. "Seems like you've finally made your mark, kid," the trader said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Yeah, I guess I have," Rylan replied, a crooked smile playing on his lips. Let's just hope it doesn't wash off. With a final wave, he continued on his way, leaving behind the chaos of the bazaar for the greater chaos of the universe. Rylan knew that this was only the beginning, but he was ready for whatever came next. "Nix scorn," he said, his voice steady and full of determination. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us. Vexus won't give up easily, and we've got to be ready." "We'll be ready," Nix affirmed. "Together. And with a bit of luck," Scorn added, "we might even survive the experience." "Here's hoping," Rylan said, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Let's show them what unpredictable really means. They were an unlikely team in an improbable universe, but they had something no one else did, a knack for chaos and a stubborn refusal to quit. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to tip the scales. As Rylan stepped into the unknown, he felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, as friends, as allies, as a force to be reckoned with. The universe was a grimdark place, full of dangers and uncertainties. But there was also hope, and in the end, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. With a last look at the bustling Starlight Bazaar, Rylan took a deep breath and moved forward. The future was unwritten, and he was ready to make his mark on it. After all, in a universe where chaos was king, it was the jesters who kept the court entertained, and Rylan was more than ready to play his part.